Captain Diana Mills stood at the main window of Earth Defense Force Station Alpha, her gray eyes fixed on the holographic displays that filled the space before her. The screen showed thousands of green dots, each representing a human colony or outpost across the galaxy. For 10 years, she had watched those lights multiply as humanity spread among the stars. She took a sip of her coffee, the routine action masking her growing unease. Something wasn't right. In the past hour, 3 colony signals had winked out. That never happened. Captain. Lieutenant Steve Parker's voice cracked with tension. We're losing contact with the Centauri sector. Diana rushed to his station, her coffee forgotten. On his screen, dozens of green dots were turning red, then black. Gone. Get me Dr. Cooper, she ordered, keeping her voice steady despite the fear growing in her chest. Now, Dr. Marcus Cooper arrived 5 minutes later, out of breath and still wearing his lab coat. His usually neat brown hair was messy, suggesting he'd run all the way from the science wing. What's happening to our colonies? Diana asked without preamble. Marcus pushed his glasses up his nose and studied the displays. His face grew pale. This is impossible. The quantum network can't fail like this. It's designed to. He stopped mid-sentence as another cluster of signals vanished. Emergency broadcast to all colonies, Diana commanded. Full bandwidth. The communication officer, Linda West, nodded and opened all channels. Broadcasting now, Captain. Diana took a deep breath. This is Captain Diana Mills of Earth Defense Force Station Alpha. All colonies report status immediately. I repeat, all colonies report status immediately. The response came in fragments. Some were clear, others broken. This is Novaterra. Something's wrong with our drives. Epsilon base here. We can't maintain. Help us. The darkness is. Then came the last complete message from humanity's farthest colony in the Sagittarius Arm. The voice belonged to Governor Jack Wilson. Earth, something's coming. It's like space itself is going dark. Our fastest ships can't. The drives won't. God help us all. After that, only static remained. Dr. Cooper's hands flew over the nearest console. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy readings at the edge of our solar system. Whatever this is, it's surrounding us. Diana felt the weight of 4 billion lives on Earth pressing down on her shoulders. Options, Doctor. I need more data. Marcus pointed to strange waves appearing on his screen. These readings, they're like nothing I've ever seen. It's as if something is actively suppressing faster than light travel and communications. The station's AI announced, Alert. Quantum network effectiveness down to 50%. 30%. 10%. Diana watched helplessly as humanity's interstellar civilization went dark. Thousands of colonies, millions of people, all cut off in less than an hour. Send ships, she ordered. Every FTL-capable vessel we have. Get them out there before. Too late, Marcus interrupted, his voice hollow. Look. The first rescue ship attempted to jump to light speed. Its engines flared bright blue, then dimmed to nothing. The ship drifted, dead in space. The same is happening everywhere, Linda reported, monitoring the emergency channels. No ship can achieve FTL. We're trapped in the solar system. Diana stood straight, her mind racing. Humanity had spread too far, too fast. Now something had cut them off from everything they'd built. But Earth remained. The solar system remained. And that meant hope remained. Dr. Cooper, she said firmly, I need you to find out what's happening. Lieutenant Parker, get me a full count of every ship and resource we have in system. Linda, keep monitoring for any signals, no matter how weak. She turned to face her crew, seeing the fear in their eyes, but also the determination. Whatever this is, she declared, whether it's natural or artificial, we're going to face it. Humanity didn't come this far to be quietly pushed back to our own backyard. We've lost our colonies for now, but we haven't lost our strength. our will, our determination. She looked out at the stars, noticing how they seemed dimmer somehow. The stars may have gone silent, but we haven't. And as long as we can fight, we will. That's an order. The crew straightened at her words. In the silence that followed, they could all feel it, the end of humanity's golden age of expansion and the beginning of something else, something that would test them all. The battle for humanity's future had begun. 5 years had passed since the stars went silent. Lieutenant Ryan Foster wiped dust from his helmet visor as he studied the strange markings on the Martian cave wall. His flashlight beam revealed symbols that shouldn't be there, couldn't be there, but were. "Base, are you seeing this?" he asked, adjusting his suit's camera. Clear as day came Dr. Emma Blake's excited voice through his radio. "Those markings, they're not natural." Ryan touched the wall carefully. The symbols were carved deep into the red rock, preserved by Mars' thin atmosphere. They showed circles being cut off from other circles, with strange lines crossing between them. "Just like what happened to us," he muttered. His discovery had come by accident. A routine survey of possible colony sites had turned into the biggest finding since the Great Silence. These caves held proof that Earth wasn't the first civilization to face this problem. Back at Mars Base 1, Admiral Karen Walsh studied the live feed with intense interest. The tough, silver-haired commander had spent 5 years trying to rebuild humanity's confidence. This discovery might change everything. "Dr. Blake," she called to the scientist beside her, "what's your first impression?" Emma pointed to specific markings on the screen. "These symbols are old, very old, but they're telling a story we know too well. See these separated circles, just like our lost colonies." A commotion at the base's landing pad interrupted them. Through the thick windows, they saw a ship touching down, one of the last refugee vessels from the outer solar system. It had taken 5 years for some ships to limp home without their faster-than-light drives. Dr. Peter Nash was on that ship. The tall, thin scientist looked exhausted as they helped him out of the airlock, but his eyes were bright with purpose. "Admiral Walsh," he said, not even waiting to remove his flight suit, "I know what's happening to us. We found something out there, in the Kuiper Belt. Something that explains everything." Karen led him to the research room, where Emma was still studying Ryan's cave footage. "Show me," she said simply. Peter pulled out a small device and projected a 3D image into the air. It showed waves of energy, like ripples in a pond, but these ripples moved inward instead of outward. "The silence isn't natural," he explained. "It's a shield, a barrier. Someone built it." Emma looked up from her work. "The cave markings, they support this. Look," she pointed to a series of symbols. "These aren't just pictures. They're equations, mathematical formulas describing exactly what Dr. Nash is showing us." Ryan's voice came through the speakers again. "There's more here. A whole chamber full of markings, and some kind of device." The camera showed a metal object half buried in the rock. It was covered in the same symbols as the walls, but it seemed to hum with hidden power even after all these years. Peter Nash stepped closer to the screen, his face pale. "That's it. That's exactly what we found in the Kuiper Belt, only this one is much older." "What exactly are we looking at?" Karen asked, her voice firm. "A key," Peter said quietly, "or maybe a lock. The ancient race that lived here, they built these devices to protect themselves from something out there, something worse than isolation." Emma's fingers flew over her tablet. "The math, it all adds up. These aren't just random carvings. They're instructions, warnings, and maybe a way out," Peter finished. Karen looked around the room, at the tired but hopeful faces of her people. 5 years of being trapped in their own solar system had pushed humanity to its limits, but they hadn't given up. "So we have 2 options," she said. "Accept this barrier that some ancient species put up to protect themselves, or find a way to break it." Ryan's voice came through, strong and clear. With all due respect, Admiral, humanity didn't get to the stars by accepting limits placed on us by others. Karen smiled slightly. Dr. Nash, Dr. Blake, I want everything you can learn from both sites. Lieutenant Foster, map every inch of those caves. She walked to the window, looking up at the dim stars. The barrier might have been built to protect, but humanity had never needed anyone else's protection. They would find their own way. 5 years ago, we lost the stars, she said. It's time we took them back. Behind her, the ancient device hummed in response, as if awakening from a long sleep, ready to share its secrets with a species that refused to be caged. Dr. Peter Nash hadn't slept in 3 days. Empty coffee cups littered his desk at Mars Base 1 as he and Emma Blake worked to decode the alien messages. The ancient device from the Martian caves sat in a sealed chamber next to their lab, its soft hum a constant reminder of their mission. Look at this pattern again, Emma said, pointing to her screen. Her long red hair was tied back messily, dark circles under her eyes. It keeps showing up in both the cave writings and the device's energy signature. Peter leaned closer. After weeks of study, they were finally starting to understand. It's not just a pattern, he said slowly. It's a map of consciousness. The door slid open, and Admiral Walsh walked in, followed by Captain Diana Mills, who had been transferred from Earth to oversee the project. Talk to me, Karen ordered. What have you found? Peter stood up and walked to the main display. The barrier isn't just blocking space travel, he explained. It's blocking specific types of energy. The aliens who built it, we're calling them the architects. They were running from something. Emma pulled up a new image. But here's the interesting part. They didn't just build a wall. They created a filter. Look at these readings. The screen showed waves of energy passing through different patterns. Some made it through, others didn't. They were hiding, Diana realized. But from what? We don't know, Peter admitted. But whatever it was, it scared them enough to cut off entire sections of the galaxy. They built these devices everywhere, creating safe zones, protected pockets of space. Emma touched the screen, changing the display. But they made a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. The filter, it has gaps, tiny ones, and human minds can somehow sense them. Karen's eyes narrowed. Explain. Peter walked to another screen showing brain wave patterns. We've been testing volunteers. When people are near the device, something happens. Their brain activity changes. It's like we can feel the spaces between the barrier. That's impossible, Diana said. So is cutting off faster than light travel across thousands of light years, Emma countered. But here we are. She pressed a button, and the sealed chamber's window cleared. The device inside pulsed with a soft blue light. Watch this, Peter said. He nodded to a young scientist sitting in a special chair near the device. Ready, Alice? Alice Jones nodded. She wore sensors on her head that connected to their computers. As they watched, she closed her eyes and concentrated. The device's hum changed pitch. On the screens, energy patterns shifted. And for just a moment, a point of light appeared in the air, a tiny breach in the barrier. Holy, Diana whispered. That's not all, Emma said excitedly. Show them the colony's test. Peter pulled up another screen. We modified a quantum communicator based on what we learned. Used it while Alice was connected to the device. And we got something back. A signal. From Novaterra colony. The room went silent. Karen stepped forward. You made contact. Just for a few seconds, Peter said. But yes, the colonies are still out there. Still alive. And now we might have a way to reach them. How? Diana asked. That breach was tiny. It's a start, Emma insisted. The architect's technology responds to consciousness. And for some reason, human minds can interact with it in ways they never expected. We're not just looking at their tech, we're changing it. Karen walked to the window, watching Alice as the young scientist rested after her attempt. The architects ran and hid, she said quietly. Left these barriers up for who knows how long. But humanity. We don't hide, Diana finished. We fight. Exactly. Peter pointed to more data scrolling across his screen. Every time we test this, the breaches get a little bigger, a little stronger. Human consciousness is actually affecting the barrier itself. Emma stood up. We have two choices. We can live in this safe zone the architects created, cut off from our colonies, and who knows how many other species trapped in their own pockets of space. Or we can break through, Karen said firmly. Find our people. Free everyone trapped behind these barriers. She turned to face them all. How long until we can make a breach big enough for a ship? Peter and Emma looked at each other. With the right equipment, the right trained people. Peter calculated. Maybe 3 months. You have 2, Karen said. Whatever scared the architects is still out there. But we're not them. We don't run. We don't hide. She looked at the device, still humming its ancient warning. We break through. The device's light pulsed brighter, as if accepting humanity's challenge. The war against the barrier had begun. Colonel Brian Hayes walked through the gleaming halls of Project Lighthouse, Earth's newest and most secret facility built inside the moon. Workers and scientists rushed past him, all focused on their crucial tasks. In just 2 months, they had transformed empty lunar caves into humanity's best hope for breaking the barrier. He stopped at the main observation window, watching the training session below. 20 pilots sat in special chairs, each wearing the new neural enhancers, silver bands that wrapped around their heads. The devices helped them focus their minds to breach the barrier. But one pilot stood out from the rest. Amy Rodriguez, Brian said softly, watching the young woman work. The displays around her chair showed the strongest connection to the barrier anyone had ever achieved. How is she doing today, Dr. Nash? Peter looked up from his console. She's amazing. Watch this. On the large screen in front of them, they could see the barrier's energy pattern. As Amy concentrated, holes began appearing in the field, not just 1 or 2 like other pilots could manage, but dozens. She's a natural, Emma Blake added, checking Amy's neural readings. It's like her mind was made for this. Below them, Amy opened her eyes. She was only 25, but her fierce determination had quickly made her Project Lighthouse's star pilot. The holes in the barrier stayed open, even as she relaxed. Send the test signal, Brian ordered. Emma pressed several buttons. A quantum pulse shot through one of the holes Amy had created. For a tense moment, everyone held their breath. Then a reply came through. Signal received from Nueva Madrid colony, the computer announced. Connection stable. The room erupted in cheers. It was their first sustained contact with a lost colony in over 5 years. Amy stood up, removing her neural enhancer. Her short black hair was damp with sweat, but she was smiling. How many colonies can we reach now? She asked as she joined them in the control room. 17, Peter answered proudly. Thanks to you and the other pilots, we're punching more holes in the barrier every day. But maintaining them is still hard. Brian nodded to a large hangar visible through another window. Inside, engineers worked on a massive ship, the Humanity's Hope. It was designed to physically pass through the larger breaches the pilots created. The ship will be ready next week, he said, but we need the breaches to be bigger and more stable before we can send it through. Amy walked to the window, watching the ship's construction. I can do better, she said simply. I can feel it. There's something about the barrier. It's like it wants to be broken. Emma checked her tablet. She's right. Every time we break through, it gets a little easier. The architects built this thing to adapt and learn. And it's learning from us. Learning that humans don't accept cages, Brian said, no matter who built them or why. Alarms suddenly blared through the facility. Red lights flashed. Energy spike. Peter shouted, "The barrier, it's reacting." On the main screen, they watched as automated systems activated across the solar system. Ancient machines, hidden for millions of years, were powering up. The architects left defenders, Emma realized, automatic systems to repair the barrier if it was ever breached. They watched as robotic ships, looking like silver spiders, emerged from hidden bases on distant moons and asteroids. They moved toward the areas where Project Lighthouse had punched through the barrier. "They're going to try to seal our breaches," Peter said. Amy was already walking back to her chair. "Not if I can help it," she said, putting her neural enhancer back on. "Colonel, permission to show these ancient robots what humans think about being trapped." Brian smiled grimly. "Permission granted. All pilots, battle stations." The 20 pilots reconnected to their systems. Above them, the barrier rippled with energy as ancient machines fought against human willpower. But Amy led the charge, her mind reaching out to create breach after breach. Where the machines sealed one hole, she and the other pilots opened 3 more. "They built this cage millions of years ago," she said through gritted teeth, "but they never planned for humanity." The barrier flickered, then cracked wider than ever before. Through the observation window, they could actually see it, a curtain of energy splitting open over the moon. "Send the signal to all colonies in range," Brian ordered. "Tell them to prepare. The cage is breaking, and humanity is coming to bring them home." The ancient machines continued their work, but they were fighting a losing battle. Humanity had found its way through the barrier, and nothing, not even the automated ghosts of a long-dead civilization, would stop them now. Captain Laura Wilson stood on the bridge of humanity's hope, her hands gripping the command rail as she watched the barrier shimmer before them. The massive ship hummed with power, ready for humanity's first attempt to physically break through the cosmic wall. "All systems check complete," her first officer, John Baker, reported. "Engineering says the barrier shields are at full power." Laura nodded, then touched her comlink. "Amy, are you ready down there?" In the ship's special pilot chamber, Amy Rodriguez sat in her advanced neural enhancer chair. 5 other top pilots flanked her, their minds already reaching out to tear holes in the barrier. "Ready, Captain," Amy replied. "The breach is forming now." Through the bridge's massive window, Laura watched space itself begin to split open. It looked like a curtain of stars being pulled apart, revealing darkness beyond. The ancient repair machines buzzed around the forming breach like angry wasps, trying to seal it. "They're too late," John said with a smile. "The breach is bigger than anything they can repair quickly." Laura pressed another button. "Engine room status." "All power ready, Captain," Chief Engineer Mark Stanley reported. "The moment that breach is wide enough, we can punch through." The ship carried new engines designed by Dr. Nash and his team. They would let them push through the barrier physically, something no one had done in millions of years. "Defensive systems online," Security Chief Sarah Roberts announced. "We're ready for whatever's on the other side." Laura took a deep breath. The first colony they hoped to reach was Novaterra, just 3 light-years away. But first, they had to get through. "Breach at 60% of required size," Amy reported. Her voice was strained. "The machines, they're changing tactics." On the tactical display, the ancient repair drones were forming new patterns. Instead of trying to seal the breach, they were gathering around it. "They're going to try to block our path," John realized. "Not today," Laura said firmly. She opened a channel to the whole ship. "All hands, prepare for breakthrough. This is what we trained for. Humanity has been caged long enough." The breach grew larger as Amy and her team pushed harder. Sweat rolled down their faces as they fought against millions of years of alien programming. "Breach at 80%, 85%. Amy called out. "Just a little more." The repair drones suddenly shot forward, forming a web across the breach. "Now or never," Laura decided. "All power to engines and shields. Amy, give us everything you've got. We're going through." The humanity's hope surged forward. its new engines glowing bright blue. The repair drone's energy web crackled against their shields. Shields at 90%, 80%. Sarah reported. They're holding. Breach at maximum size. Amy shouted. Go. Go now. Laura gripped her rail tighter. Full power. Breakthrough. The ship slammed into the drone web like a battering ram. Alarms blared as their shields took the impact. But humanity's determination proved stronger than ancient machinery. The web shattered. They hit the barrier breach at full speed. For a moment, everything stretched and twisted. Laura felt like her whole body was being pulled in different directions. Then they were through. Status. Laura called out as soon as reality settled. Shields at 40% but holding, Sarah reported. All systems functional. The breach. Amy's tired voice came through. It's still open. We did it. We really did it. Laura looked at her navigation screen. They were exactly where they wanted to be, on the other side. The repair drones hadn't followed them through. Send the signal, she ordered. Let them know we made it. John activated the quantum communicator they'd brought. Nova Terra Colony, this is the Earth ship Humanity's Hope. Do you copy? For a long moment, there was silence. Then, Earth ship, this is Nova Terra. A voice crackled through, filled with joy. We never thought. We've been alone so long. Laura smiled as cheers erupted across her bridge. We're coming to get you, she promised. All of you. The barrier tried to cage humanity. Big mistake. She looked back at the breach they'd created. It stood like a tear in reality, proof that nothing could hold humanity back forever. Send word to Project Lighthouse, she ordered. Tell them to start preparing more ships. This was just the first breakthrough. She straightened in her chair. The stars might have gone silent, but humanity just learned to scream. Behind them, the ancient barrier rippled, as if finally understanding that its long reign was coming to an end. Dr. Peter Nash stared at his computer screen in horror. The numbers couldn't be right, but they were. Get me Admiral Walsh and Captain Wilson. Now, he shouted to Emma Blake. Minutes later, in the Project Lighthouse Command Center, they all watched as Peter explained what he found. The holographic display showed the barrier's energy pattern spinning wildly out of control. The breaches we're making aren't just holes anymore, he explained, his voice shaking. They're causing the whole barrier to become unstable, like a dam with too many cracks. Laura Wilson, speaking through a video link from the Humanity's Hope, frowned. What happens if it fails completely? Space-time collapse, Peter said simply. When the architects built this thing, they wove it into the fabric of space itself. If it falls apart wrong, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Karen Walsh studied the data carefully. How long do we have? Maybe 3 days before the damage becomes permanent. We need to either close all the breaches and repair the barrier, or, Peter paused, then took a deep breath, or find a way to bring it down safely. All of it. Close the breaches. Laura protested. We've already rescued 2 colonies. There are thousands more waiting. Emma stepped forward. There might be a third option. She pointed to new readings from the ancient device. The barrier's core programming is trying to adapt to our breaches. If we could understand it fully, maybe we could control how it comes down. How? Karen asked. Peter's face went pale as he realized what Emma was suggesting. Someone would need to connect directly to the barrier's main control systems, not through our neural enhancers. A direct connection to the alien tech. He looked at her. It would probably kill them. I'll do it, Amy Rodriguez said, walking into the room. She must have been listening from the pilot chamber. No, Peter said firmly. You're too valuable as a pilot. But I've studied this technology longer than anyone. I can do it. Karen looked at him hard. You understand what you're suggesting? Peter nodded. The architects left emergency controls in their devices, one last failsafe. By connecting directly, I might be able to reprogram the barrier. Make it come down safely instead of collapsing. Alarms started blaring. On the main screen, they watched as new cracks appeared in the barrier, spreading like spider webs across space. "We're out of time," Emma said softly. "The barrier is starting to fail on its own." Peter walked to the ancient device, now connected to their most powerful computers. "Get everyone back to safe distances," he ordered. "And whatever happens, don't try to disconnect me." He sat in the neural enhancer chair as Emma quickly attached additional sensors to his head and chest. His hand shook slightly as he reached for the device. "Peter," Emma said quietly, "there has to be another way." He smiled at her. "Humanity doesn't hide from challenges, remember? We face them head-on." He looked at Karen. "Admiral, if this works, the barrier will start coming down in sections. Be ready. There might be other species trapped out there. They'll need help." Karen nodded grimly. "Good luck, Doctor." Peter gripped the device with both hands. Immediately, alien symbols began flowing across all the screens. His body went rigid as ancient knowledge poured into his mind. "The programming," he gasped. "It's so complex. But I can see it now. See how they built it." His nose started bleeding. Emma moved to help him, but he shook his head. "Almost there." The barrier visible through the windows began to pulse with new colors. The repair drone suddenly stopped moving, then fell dormant. "He's doing it," Emma whispered, watching the readings. "He's actually rewriting their programming." Peter's voice was barely a whisper now. Tell them we didn't hide. Humanity never hides." The ancient device flared with brilliant light. Through the windows, they watched as sections of the barrier began to dissolve. Not violently, but in a controlled cascade. Peter slumped in the chair, but he was smiling. On his screens, the alien symbols had been replaced with a simple message in English. "There I your control RELEASED. Emergency shutdown INITIATE. Containment PROTOCOLS disability." As his eyes closed, the stars beyond the barrier began to shine brighter than they had in millions of years. Humanity's cage was finally opening. The price had been high, but freedom always was. 10 years after Dr. Peter Nash's sacrifice, Admiral Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of Earth's newest flagship, the Nash's Legacy. The ship was massive, built with both human innovation and recovered alien technology. Through its wide windows, she could see dozens of other ships, not all of them human. "Fleet status," she asked her second-in-command, Commander Linda Chen. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Linda replied. "The Centaurians are in position. The Proxima Alliance vessels have taken their assigned sectors. Even the Arcturus refugees are joining the formation." Amy nodded, touching the neural enhancer she still wore. It was smaller now, more elegant than the clunky versions they used years ago. On her uniform, she wore 2 pins, her Admiral's stars, and a small replica of the ancient device that had changed everything. "Open channel to all ships," she ordered. "Today we finish what Dr. Nash started." The last section of the barrier still stood before their combined fleet. Behind it, their long-range sensors had detected thousands of signals, more trapped civilizations waiting to be freed. "This is Admiral Rodriguez to all ships," she began. 10 years ago, humanity refused to accept imprisonment. We fought back. We broke free. And in doing so, we found we weren't alone. She looked at the alien ships flying alongside humanity's vessels. The Centaurians, with their crystalline ships that sparkled like stars. The Proxima Alliance, whose organic vessels seemed to breathe in space. The Arcturus refugees, saved from their dying systems, their ships a mix of desperation and hope. "The architects meant to protect us all," she continued. "They built these barriers out of fear, trapping countless civilizations in cosmic cages. But they didn't count on the power of unity, of determination, of hope." On her tactical display, she watched as all ships moved into their final positions. This last section of barrier was the strongest, protected by the heaviest concentration of repair drones they'd ever seen. Today, we bring down the last wall. Not just for humanity, but for every species that looks to the stars and dreams of freedom. She nodded to Linda, who activated their newest weapon. A device built from Dr. Nash's final designs, powered by the combined will of 100 neural-enhanced pilots. All ships, power up your barrier breakers, Annie ordered. Focus your beams on these coordinates. Together, on my mark. The repair drones swarmed toward them, but this time they were ready. Small fighter ships launched from every fleet, engaging the ancient machines. This time, organic determination faced mechanical persistence as equals. 3, 2, 1, mark. Energy beams from 100 ships converged on a single point. The barrier flickered, struggling against their combined power. But Amy had learned from the best. She understood now what Peter had seen in those final moments. The barrier wasn't just a wall. It was a living program. And like any program, it could be rewritten. Second wave, engage, she commanded. More beams joined the first. The barrier's light began to pulse erratically. Behind it, they could see more stars, more worlds, more hope waiting to be freed. Final wave, everything we've got. Amy closed her eyes, focusing her own neural enhancer on the point of contact. She felt other minds joining hers, human, Centaurian, Proximan, all united in one purpose. The barrier shattered, not with violence, but with a sigh, like ice melting in spring. The repair drones froze, then fell dormant, their purpose finally ended. All ships, forward, Amy ordered. Begin rescue operations. Find everyone who's trapped out there. Show them they're not alone anymore. As ships moved through the former barrier, signals began pouring in. New civilizations, hidden for millions of years, calling out in joy and disbelief at their sudden freedom. Linda looked up from her console, smiling. Admiral, you should see this. She put an image on the main screen. It showed the site where the first breach had been made, years ago. The space there was different now, marked by a permanent aurora of colors, where reality had been reshaped by human determination. The stars aren't silent anymore, Amy said softly. She touched her neural enhancer one last time, remembering Peter's sacrifice, remembering all those who had fought to reach this moment. A message came in from Earth. Well done, Admiral. Bring them home. Amy looked out at the freed stars, at the combined fleet of multiple species working together, at the endless possibilities now open to them all. No, she said, we're all already home. The whole galaxy is home now. Above them, the stars sang with voices that had been silent for millions of years, and humanity led the chorus. The end.